The pregnant German Shepherd didn't just show up at the Marine's door by accident. She had walked 3 miles through a storm, bleeding and collapsing twice, because somehow she knew exactly which house would save her. What the Marine found, when the 7th puppy was born, would make him question everything. He thought he understood about coincidence. Tyler Mercer had been home from deployment for exactly 42 days, and he still wasn't used to the silence. The kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums at 3 in the morning. That made you check the windows twice before lying down. His small rental house sat at the end of a gravel road in rural North Carolina, surrounded by pine trees that swayed and whispered things he tried not to decode. Tonight, though, the silence was broken by something else entirely low. Desperate scratching at his front door, punctuated by the relentless drumming of rain against wood. Tyler moved toward the door with the measured caution of someone trained to expect the worst. When he pulled it open, the cold October wind hit him first, followed by the sight that would change everything. A German Shepherd, soaked to the bone, her amber eyes glazed with exhaustion, stood trembling on his porch. Her ribs showed through matted fur. Her paws were raw and bleeding, and her belly swollen and heavy, told a story of desperation that needed no words. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The dog looked up at him, and in that moment, Tyler saw something he recognized from his own reflection. On the hardest nights, it was the look of someone who had fought too long, traveled too far, and was asking for just one more chance. She didn't bark. She didn't whine. She simply sat, placed one bleeding paw forward, and waited. Tyler's hand was already reaching for her collar before his brain caught up. There was no collar, no tags, no identification of any kind. Just a living creature, heavy with life, asking a stranger to care. He'd seen strays before, everyone in the area had, but this felt different. The deliberateness of her arrival, the way she'd chosen his door specifically, out of all the houses scattered along these backwoods roads, as if she knew something he didn't. "All right, girl," he whispered, his voice rough from disuse. "Let's get you inside." She rose slowly, each movement careful and pained, and crossed the threshold into his small living room. Water pooled beneath her as she stood there, scanning the space with intelligent, assessing eyes. Tyler grabbed every towel he owned, which admittedly wasn't many, and began drying her gently, checking for injuries as he worked. That's when he felt it, the tightness of her abdomen, the occasional tremor that rippled across her sides, the rapid, shallow breathing. This dog wasn't just pregnant, she was in active labor. Tyler's pulse kicked up a notch, that old combat alertness flooding back. He'd been trained for a lot of things: tactical operations, field medicine, crisis management under fire, but delivering puppies? That particular skill set had been mysteriously absent from his military training. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen. The nearest emergency vet was 40 minutes away, and in this storm, with these roads, it might as well have been in another state. He looked back at the Shepherd, who had lowered herself carefully onto the pile of towels, her breathing coming in measured pants now. She was looking directly at him, trusting him, expecting him to know what to do. Tyler thought of his sergeant, a grizzled veteran named Rodriguez, who used to say that the most important thing in any crisis wasn't knowledge, it was calm. "Panic spreads faster than fire," Rodriguez would growl. "Stay calm, and the mission finds a way." He took a breath, centered himself, and opened his laptop. For the next 20 minutes, Tyler speed-read every article, every forum post, every veterinary guide he could find on emergency dog births. He gathered supplies: clean towels, scissors, dental floss for umbilical cords, a heating pad, a cardboard box lined with blankets. The Shepherd watched him move through these preparations with what looked oddly like approval, as if she were a commander evaluating a soldier's readiness. Then it began. The first contraction hit her hard, a full-body shudder that made Tyler instinctively drop to his knees beside her. She didn't cry out, though. She just bore down with the focused intensity of someone doing exactly what nature demanded. Tyler found himself murmuring to her the same steady, grounding words he'd used with frightened soldiers in the field. "You've got this. I'm right here. You're doing great." 15 minutes later, the first puppy arrived, Tyler's hands, which had remained steady through mortar fire and medevac chaos, trembled slightly as he cleared the tiny creature's airways, stimulated its breathing, and watched those miniature ribs expand with the first gasping breath of life. The mother immediately turned, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten, and began cleaning her newborn with fierce, protective devotion. It was the most beautiful thing Tyler had ever seen. The puppies came steadily over the next 3 hours, 2, 3, 5, 7, 7 perfect, squirming, mealing miracles. Each one fought for and delivered in the quiet safety of a stranger's living room. Tyler worked alongside the mother like a surgical assistant, clearing airways, tying off cords, making sure each puppy found its way to warmth and milk. The shepherd barely rested between deliveries, but each time a new puppy arrived, she would glance at Tyler, a quick look of acknowledgement that seemed to say, "We're doing this together." When the last puppy finally nursed, and the mother lay back with a deep, shuddering sigh of relief, Tyler sat on the floor beside the box and just watched. Dawn was breaking outside, pink light filtering through the windows, illuminating the small family that hadn't existed 12 hours ago. The shepherd lifted her head, looked directly at him, and did something that made his throat tighten. She reached out and gently licked his hand, just once, a simple gesture of trust and gratitude. Tyler called the local animal shelter when they opened at 8. The woman who answered, a kind-voiced volunteer named Sarah, listened to his story in stunned silence. "That's incredible," she finally said. "She must have sensed something in you. Dogs in labor seek out safe spaces instinctively. She chose you for a reason." She arranged for a veterinary checkup that afternoon and mentioned, almost casually, "If you're interested in fostering them until the puppies are weaned, we could really use someone like you." Tyler looked at the shepherd, who was watching him with those intelligent amber eyes. He thought about the silence he'd been living with, the emptiness that no amount of unpacking or routine could fill. He thought about purpose and trust and the strange grace of being needed by something helpless and new. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I think I can do that." Over the next 8 weeks, Tyler's house transformed. The silence was replaced by the chaos of 7 growing puppies, their tiny howls and playful wrestling matches filling rooms that had only echoed before. The mother, whom Tyler named Liberty, because she'd fought for her own freedom and one recovered her strength and her spirit. Neighbors started stopping by, drawn by word of mouth and curiosity. And suddenly Tyler found himself part of a community he hadn't known existed. Kids from down the road came to play with the puppies. Sarah from the shelter became a regular visitor, then a friend, then something more. When adoption day finally came, each puppy went to a carefully vetted home. Tyler stood in his suddenly quiet house, feeling the absence like a physical thing. Liberty sat beside him, her head tilted, as if asking what came next. Sarah, who'd lingered after the last family left, touched his shoulder gently. "You know," she said softly, "Liberty still needs someone, and from what I've seen, I think she already chose." Tyler knelt down, and Liberty immediately pressed her head against his chest. He felt the steady beat of her heart, the warmth of her trust, the simple, uncomplicated certainty of their bond. "Yeah," he said, his voice thick. "She did, because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. Sometimes it arrives at 3 in the morning, bleeding and desperate, asking only that you open the door. And sometimes, in opening that door, you find you're not just offering shelter, you're accepting it." If this story touched your heart, leave a comment telling me about a time an animal chose you. And if you believe in the power of second chances for both humans and the creatures who find us in our darkest moments, subscribe and join this community. Because every story here is about the moments that remind us why we keep our doors and our hearts open.